language because we have our next keynote session here on stage. As I said already this morning, we have always throughout the day 3 different keynotes, special international guests that we invited to give us some visionary ideas about the future of social. And next for this session, I'd like to welcome Jon Mell from IBM, from the IBM Smarter Workforce Integration Lead, something like this. No? Yeah. I'm horrible in your titles. So, Jon Mell is he's an expert in the field. He has a long, track record already in the social collaboration field. Has been working formerly with some consulting business and so on. So he is a real expert, and you want to talk today about the employee engagement.
Yes.
So why do we have to talk about this?
Well, I think it's an important part of why we're doing social. I think it's important to look beyond just the technology and what the actual end outcome is that we're looking for. So that's what I'll be covering today.
So this is also a reason why people now have to do social, because people are not engaged anymore. Employees are not
I think employee
anymore.
engagement has been pretty poor with all the studies that we've seen to date. So I think it's a key area to work on.
And we really have to find the right angle to tackle this problem.
Absolutely.
And that's your keynote about. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, that's not. I think that was the next door. So thank you very much. My name's Jon. I work for IBM looking after our smarter workforce integration. And it's really interesting, in the last couple of social business events I've been asked to talk at, how employee engagement has come up time and time again. And what I'd like to frame this talk in is around putting social in a bit of a wider context. So I think it's a big mistake to think of social as something to be achieved in its own right. And I have some arguments with some of my friends who are in the adoption business, and I'm kind of thinking, if you're worried about adoption of social for the sake of the adoption of social, you're doing it wrong. Right? You shouldn't need to be worrying about how many microblogs are we getting, how many comments, how many blog posts. Because this isn't actually what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is ensure that our people can actually be as productive as possible and be the best they can be. So for those who are here for Samir's keynote earlier, how sellers are spending 65% of their time not selling. Right? That's the needle we need to move, not how many blog posts did I get this week, this month, this quarter. And so with that, and that's where I think this idea of social being separate from work or separate from a business is wrong. Okay, we've got to think about how is social actually infused into what we do, and how we engage employees, and how we actually manage talent. And this is kind of, okay, so social is related to employee engagement, but why should I care about employee engagement? And this is something we're focusing on in IBM, so why do we care about employee engagement? Why do we care if our employees are engaged? And it's not because we're nice and we want people to be, the only reason is to have employees that are happy. That's important, but it's not actually the fundamental reason. Employee engagement drives customer satisfaction. We've all experienced a bad customer experience where we can just tell that the employee we're working with on the other side isn't engaged. Equally, we've all had a really good experience where we've actually found our own customer loyalty has been improved because we've had a good experience because the employee is engaged. So we believe that employee engagement fundamentally drives the client's experience, and a client experience is what drives business results. And that's why it's important for us to look at employee engagement. And we're also seeing this change and go higher and higher on the CEO agenda. So we found that 72% of CEOs in our most recent study fundamentally believed that human capital was the most important business lever they could pull to drive sustained economic value. And we're starting to see this more and more important, because at the end of the day, once you've done Six Sigma and outsourced and done your business process management, the only thing that really differentiates you from your competitors is A, the quality of the people you have in your business, and B, how engaged they are in actually working for you. And we see these 4 trends that are actually driving change in the world of work. And first, which is a big focus of today, obviously, is the rise of social in the workplace. And this is not just a technical statement in terms of whether or not people coming into the workforce or the new generation coming into the workforce, if they are going to demand the use of new social tools. It's part of that, but it's also a change in culture. That people are not necessarily thinking now that top-down command and control is the best way to get things done. So we've got this philosophy saying we need to open up, we need to empower individuals, yet we've got collaboration tools which are stuck in the old workflow approval process mode. We've also got the rise of big data analytics. As we create more data, which we do using social, as we create more microblogs and more posts and more tweets, we create a huge amount of digital breadcrumbs which can be analyzed in terms of what customers and employees really think about the organization. We've got the rise of cloud and mobile technology, so we're seeing that the line of business is getting more and more involved in decisions that they are taking, and they're not waiting for IT to catch up. Okay, if the business finds that they can do it better using a cloud service, they'll go and use that cloud service rather than waiting for IT to use what would usually take an 18-month implementation cycle. And also the demands of mobile, where always on, has taken on a new level. And we really need to make sure that we're able to interact anytime, any place, anywhere, which has implications for lifestyle in terms of always being available, but also it changes the culture of how you work in your organization, if you can, and to some degree are expected, to reply to an email anytime, anywhere. And finally, the other trend we're seeing is the rise of the independent worker. So this is where in the US, I think it's about 30% of individuals class themselves as independent workers. So they are people who don't necessarily see themselves belonging to an employer, even though they might be on a permanent employee contract. This is how they see themselves internally. They're far more likely to move and see themselves as independent contractors whose services are rendered to an employer. And this really changes around how much harder organizations are going to have to work to keep these people. And we see the importance of HR going higher and higher and higher as well. So I kind of liken this to the CIO, how, in the early days of IT, they were seen as a cost center, the people who knew how to keep the lights on, and now they've got a seat at the table driving mobile commerce and things like that. And I think we're going to start to see the same in HR, whereas employee engagement and social business becomes more and more important, they are actually going to have a seat at the table in terms of how they're actually going to derive value to the business for employee engagement. And we're seeing a shift in what they're thinking, okay, in terms of the old problems of they join trade unions, they sue the organization. This is not the case anymore. It's more about, are the good people staying? The people who I want to stay, are they actually staying? And the people who are, is it the other way around? Is it the people that I don't want to stay are actually, they're the ones holding on? And what we're actually seeing as well is not just a demand to measure this, but also to predict it going forward as well. And this is where we start to see the merge with social business. So we're not necessarily seeing people doing employee engagement for the sake of employee engagement in the same way we don't see people doing social for the sake of doing social. What we see is people actually tying things to real business metrics. So for example, in retail, a core metric that we often work with our clients on is number of items in shopping cart. Now, there are huge ways that social business can help drive this by sharing ideas, and I'll talk about one in a minute. But also, employee engagement is vital here as well in the retail experience. When you go and ask a store assistant to show you to an item, how that interaction works depends very much on that employee's engagement, which drives your client's experience, which delivers business results. And so these are, what we're kind of looking at in terms of how we apply this to the talent you have in organization, how they are engaged. We see these 5 areas that we're working on. And at the core of it is replacing guesswork with precision. So how can we actually start to make informed decisions about our talent using data rather than the gut feels that have happened in the past? So with some CHROs I meet, they say, if my colleagues around the executive table guessed as much as I did, they would not have a job for much longer. Yet for HR, it's kind of seemed that gut intuition in terms of who should be in which role, it's acceptable, and we're trying to see what kind of data we can put in there as well. So we have talent acquisition, how do we bring the right talent into the organization? Leadership and engagement, how we actually engage them while they're in. How do we optimize them by giving the right tools and processes to be able to get the job done? What recognition and rewards are needed? And finally, how do we analyze what we're doing? So in terms of talent acquisition and finding the right talent, there's 3 kind of stages to this. One is a process to make sure that you actually can get the right talent into your organization. We work with some organizations that have 2 million applications, some of the largest retailers in the US, 2 million applications a year. But that's just not enough, because that will just help you hire bad people really quickly and really effectively. So what we're looking at from the science and data perspective is, how do we actually understand what great looks like in your organization? How do we actually understand what traits and behaviors are needed to be demonstrated in order to be successful? Because they won't be on the CV. If you'll think about the best manager you ever had and picture that person and what attributes made them a great manager, I bet you'll find that none of them are actually on the CV. CVs are actually a very bad way to work out if someone's going to be good at a job or not. But it's about the culture. So is someone who's going to be a good programmer in IBM going to be equally as effective at Apple or Google, even though they have exactly the same skills on their CV? It's a different culture, it's a different environment. So how can we put screening in place to make sure that we're actually bringing people who come in with the right attitudes? Are you an open and collaborative organization that really likes sharing and using social tools? If so, you're going to be looking for a very different person. If you're conservative and you actually have a top-down control mentality, the skills are going to be very different. And then finally, the third piece is onboarding. Once they're actually in the organization, how do we get them up to speed as quickly as possible and don't have that crucial point where they leave after 6 months because they feel they made the right decision and you've put all the investment in and got none of the feedback. And so we put people through visual scenarios where we understand what the actual rights, the culturally appropriate response in your organization is, and make sure that people understand what they're getting into before they actually start to apply for the role. And it's random slide time. Okay, an example of this is IKEA. If you go onto the IKEA site, you can see where they actually, because IKEA is, for those of you who know IKEA, it's a very unique organization, if you can have something that's very unique. But there is a certain culture around IKEA. When you go into an IKEA store, it's different from other furniture stores. So this is something they use where you actually ask questions. If I was a car designer, I'd want to be known for making cars that. So actually, there's no right or wrong here. It's trying to find out, are you going to fit into the culture and the organization of IKEA? And it paints the room depending on your answer. And unfortunately, I wasn't suitable when I took the test. But these are the kind of things you can put in place to screen the process. And then when you get them on board, so this is something we use in that period after someone's accepted an offer, but before they've actually come in. So we call it soon to be blue. So that accepted but not onboarding period, where you can actually get people to start to meet the people they are going to meet. It's a social community based on connections. They can start to interact with their colleagues before their first day. They can even get a jump start on some of their learning, so they don't come in and get that fire hose thrown at them of all this stuff they need to do, and they actually get a chance to interact with people before their first day. And then, of course, once they come into the organization, there's a social community where they can actually start to find similar people who've just joined, people who are in that early 6-month experience. And we've managed to reduce our 6-month attrition rate, that period where people leave in the first 6 months, by about 4 to 5 percentage points by introducing this social technology. So then in terms of engagement as well, so what's really crucial around engagement is actually tying it back to business results. So Caterpillar is a great example. We found that where there was high employee engagement, there were 3 times fewer accidents in their plants compared to where there was low engagement. They also had rework up by 60%, and customer loyalty was up as well. So these are real results. When we say that HR is getting more of a seat at the table, you're not talking about, well, I'm getting lots of blog posts, I'm getting lots of high engagement scores. You're talking about, I'm reducing accidents for an industrial organization. These are the metrics that the board look at every Monday morning. You're delivering real value to the organization. And we're now using this with our social tools. So when we're doing things like engagement surveys, we're not just doing point in time, we're actually using analytics to look at sentiment throughout the whole time when people are posting both on internal and external social networks to actually understand what the sentiment of the customers and IBM employees are as well. And when we do engagement surveys, we're using social tools to enhance it. So we're actually publishing the results through social networks. We're asking people to look at the results of this engagement survey and vote on ideas as to how engagement can be proved, and then track the actual actions for a social platform so you can close the loop. And people start to see, because I responded this way in an organization, in a survey, and because I replied and I contributed to this idea, I have actually seen genuine action taken by the organization, and this change has happened. And that's a missing link in most engagement surveys. And again, people don't necessarily think they're stopping work and logging on to social software to use social software. What they're doing is they're taking part in the employee engagement survey, and it happens to use a social tool. In terms of talent optimization, where we see huge progress here is around, so here's a story, a classic social software story. So this is one of our customers in the US. It's a retail customer, so a home improvement store, DIY home improvement store. And some young intern, summer student, had a great idea about making a display to sell a product that was not getting sold very much. It was a paint tray. So she made this innovative store display, and it sold out. And she couldn't order more than 10. The system, the back-end ordering process, she couldn't order more than 10 to replace it. So she posts on her social software environment, hey, anyone know how to order more than 10? And you think the answer might be, well, someone came back and said, here's how you break the process, and well, hey, they sold more than 10. What actually happened was the other stores saw it and said, hang on a second, how are you even selling 10? Right, we can't sell any of these things. So she shares the idea of her store display, and this idea goes viral across the network of stores, and they get $1 million extra revenue from this idea. So there's a classic social software story. But then from a talent perspective, the next question is, well, how do I hire more people like her? Remember, the point is not to get good posts on a social software environment. The point is to make your employees the best they can possibly be and who fit into your culture. So how do I hire more people who are likely to make these posts? Right? And that's what we're now taking social business to a much wider context than I got a great blog, I got a great wiki, look, I can do @ mentions and hashtags. We're actually looking at what processes can we apply this to actually generate business value. We'd look at talent recognition and rewards. This is an important angle as well, not just from benchmarking salaries and things like that, which are important in terms of employee engagement, but using social ways to recognize people as well. So this is how we announce our Best of IBM Awards, which is the top 100 people, people who've demonstrated fantastic contributions throughout the year. Our CEO posts on their connections profile. That's how they find out about it. But it's also how their colleagues and teams find out about it as well. And this has done wonders to actually raise awareness within IBM that this award even exists. So again, these people aren't thinking about what do I post on my profile. These people are taking part in the recognition process that we have within IBM. And we're not saying stop your work, go and be social, and now come back and do your work again. And finally, the last point I wanted to mention was analytics. So this really could be embedded throughout the whole, its role is in every step of the process. But I wanted to call it out separately because you have the ability to just, analytics within the product. How many posts have I made? How many jobs am I filling? What are my engagement scores? But what we're looking at with our Watson technology is to look at saying, how can I actually do predictive analytics? What is the next best action for my team? Okay, my engagement scores are low in this area. What actions do I need to take to improve them? What interview questions should I ask this candidate to make sure they're going to be appropriate, not just for the role, but culturally fit in with the team? What's the next best learning I should go on to, if this is my career objectives, who should I connect with? What are my next learning actions I need to take? But not only questions like that, but then also to look at what people are saying about us. We were able to, one of the stories I heard in our conference in Orlando, we were able to look at something that was going on in the Australian Parliament where IBM was being criticized about something to do with tax regulations, and we were able to see what impact that was going to have on our recruitment ability in Australia. And we were able to take specific action to address that concern that people had and actually preempt it because we were able to see that it could cause us recruitment problems. So this is not just what are people saying within the organization, but what are government and public opinion saying outside the organization, which affects the kind of talent I can bring into my organization, which affects how collaborative I'm going to be, which will ultimately drive my use of social business. And I wanted to end on a story which really kind of sums this all up. So AMC Theaters are a cinema chain in the US. I remember I was talking about the metrics, that accident rate at Caterpillar, key metrics that an organization looks at every Monday morning. And what are the most important job roles that actually affect that metric? And for AMC Cinemas, they worked out it was actually popcorn sales. That is how they make their margin. That's what they make their money. I mean, they're selling air, right, for €3 a bucket. But that's how they make their money. So they looked at, well, what makes a good popcorn seller in AMC Theaters? What is it about them? And they were able to look at those personality traits and then adjust their hiring and professional development to actually encourage hiring people with those traits. And they were also able to share best practices. So they were able to say, look, here is how my team that I manage does really well at selling popcorn, and I need a social environment to share that. That's an obvious use for social business to actually start to share the information. But they also looked at management. Why are these managers managing high performers and these managers hiring low performers and actually able to share the data and the analytics to do it? So they're able to take the gut feel out of the equation and actually start to replace guesswork with precision. And so just to conclude, social business cannot be seen in isolation. It is something that is actually driving business results. What we're trying to do with social business is to make our employees the best they can possibly be, get the organization out of the way and allow them to really be productive and actually have the career they want to have. In order to do that, we need to look wider than just a social business platform. Of course, we need one, right? But we need to look wider than that. We need to look at how do I hire the best talent and how do I empower and enable the talent that I currently have. And that's our approach. That's what we're looking at in terms of employee engagement and why we think it's so important to social business. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jon. 1, 2. Okay. So working on the employee engagement is key also for the social business success.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's push and pull. I think that. That's
what I wanted to ask as a second question. Is social also the key for
employee engagement? It works both ways. So I think you're not going to get you can't kind of hang these. You can't have these catchphrases, these mission statements about employees are our most important asset and all this kind of stuff if you don't actually allow them to do their jobs. And I think that you'll end up with. One of my old colleagues used to say, you'll end up with 1950s management theory with 1990s collaboration tools in 2014. Whereas we've got this the workflow-based classic document collaboration workflows that we have are command and control. I need to approve this, then it goes to this person, then it goes to this person. And that's needed in certain environments. I'm not saying you never need it. That is needed in certain environments. But management theory today is much more about empower and enable compared to command and control, and we need tools and processes to allow us to do that. And that will drive employee engagement
But this all follows the idea that, well, people are getting more engaged when there's a more open and transparent information exchange. So is this true? Can we generalize this to all types of employees, to all types of all generations and so on? So
yeah, I think if you there's a saying, and I'll misquote it and I'll get the credit wrong, but there's a saying, if you do a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So and I think that applies across cultures and across industries and across generations.
But loving my work, is it just dependent on that I get all the information?
I think it's an element of it. I wouldn't say, so what I wouldn't want to say is you just install some social software and magically your employee engagement goes up. I mean, it's an element of it, but as I said, it is a means. Social is a means, it's not an end.
Okay, but we need everything around, as you said.
Yeah.
Also, we need new kinds of leadership supporting this and so on to really to get this engagement going.
And you have to go back at what are you trying to do? Are you trying to increase the number of items in your shopping cart? Are you trying to reduce the number of accidents in your production line? Are you trying to increase customer loyalty and customer satisfaction? You then have to look at what impact do employees have on that key business problem? So if it's number of items in my shopping cart, what key actions, what key impact do my employees have? And then what tools and engagement and leadership and inspiration do they need in order to do that? And social is a key component of that. But I think that's the way you need to look at it from the business problem rather than, okay, I've installed some social software and no one's using it and I have an adoption problem.
Can I spread this on all the industries? So is this, you brought some examples, but still, is this working out for all the industries?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've yet to see an industry that says, what we really need is people coming to work who just don't want to be there and want to get home as quickly as possible. I don't know of any industry where that is a good thing, unless you know of one.
No, but on the other hand, you still got those, especially in Germany, those working councils who are regulating, so also the use of technology today. So this is a little bit we have to work against.
Well, I think work with, because I think one of the speakers earlier was saying that although you might initially think with workers' councils in Germany, I mean you look at some of our biggest customers in Europe are based in Germany and having a lot of success with this stuff.
So there's still a workaround if you really negotiate with the working council.
Well, I think
and
it's working
integrate
with. I mean that's where it's always been successful, when you engage with those organizations early.
So, what are your recommendations? So yes, we have heard that working on the employee engagement is key for, well, in both ways. So social is key for the engagement, but also working on the engagement, on having a real objective or orientation on the engagement is also key for the social technology adoption, the success with the adoption. But what are there any more recommendations you can give on this? So to really support the adoption of the social technology?
Well, I think it's to start with what you're trying to achieve. I mean, when you talk about adoption, you're not trying to get a large number of blog posts or a large number of comments. That's just noise. What you're trying to, I mean, if you look at financial institutions right now, a lot of what they're trying to do is how do we change the culture so that we don't have a repeat of the financial crisis? That is the top of mind. So how does social business and how does talent, how does employee engagement, how does that drive the culture, which affects whether someone in that organization is going to take an action that is going to cause some of the financial disasters that we've seen. In retail, it might be sales per square foot or sales per labor hour. How do we actually maximize that? What are we actually trying to achieve? What's the impact of employee engagement? How could social actually help us achieve that objective? And then the whole ROI of social and all that stuff will just go out of the door, because you're not talking about the ROI of social. You're talking about avoiding a repeat of a financial crisis. You're talking about increasing sales per labor hour. You're talking about the key metrics that matter to the business.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you, Jon Mell from IBM.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.